The morning I woke up to find a certified letter from the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association taped to my front door. I knew my life was about to get complicated in ways I never imagined. I had been living in my house on Oak Ridge Lane in Burlington, Vermont for 3 years now, and despite the occasional reminder about keeping my grass trimmed or painting my shutters the approved shade of cream, I had mostly stayed off the HOA's radar. My name is Samuel Thompson, and I bought this property specifically because it sat at the entrance of the Riverside Meadows development, right before the private bridge that led to the rest of the neighborhood. The location was perfect for my civil engineering consulting business, and the previous owner had grandfathered me into an arrangement that most people in the community did not even know existed. I ripped open the letter while standing on my porch in my bathrobe, the January cold biting at my exposed ankles. The words on the page made my coffee-deprived brain work overtime to process what I was reading. Dear Mr. Thompson, it has come to our attention that you have been applying excessive amounts of sodium chloride, road salt, to your driveway and front walkway during winter weather events. As per Section 14.7 of the Riverside Meadows HOA bylaws, recently amended and ratified, the use of traditional road salt is strictly prohibited due to environmental concerns and potential damage to community landscaping. You are required to cease this practice immediately and switch to approved ice melting alternatives, which can be purchased through our recommended vendor, Green Earth Solutions. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250. Sincerely, Patricia Cunningham, HOA President. I read it 3 times. Patricia Cunningham had been a thorn in my side since she took over as HOA President 8 months ago, but this was a new level of absurdity. I had not even received notification about any amendment to the bylaws, and I was pretty sure that you could not just spring new rules on homeowners without proper notice and voting procedures. I went inside and called my neighbor, Tom, who lived 2 houses down from me across the bridge. Tom, did you get any notice about a bylaw amendment banning salt? Oh yeah, that thing, Tom said, sounding distracted. I could hear his kids screaming in the background. Patricia sent out an email about it back in November. There was a vote at the meeting. You did not come. I never got an email, I said, feeling my frustration rise. And nobody told me about a meeting. Huh, that is weird. Well, anyway, most people voted for it. Patricia was going on and on about how salt kills plants and gets tracked into houses and ruins the environment. She had this whole presentation with pictures of dead shrubs. You know how she gets. I didn't know how she got. Patricia was the kind of person who measured her neighbor's grass with a ruler and filed complaints if it exceeded the 3-inch maximum by even a 1/4 inch. She drove a white Lexus SUV with a laugh, love sticker on the back and wore her blonde hair in that specific style that seemed to be required for HOA presidents everywhere. A shoulder-length cut with chunky highlights that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. So what are people using instead? I asked. That Green Earth stuff. It is like 3 times as expensive as regular salt, and honestly it does not work as well, but nobody wants to deal with Patricia's fines. She already hit the Martins with a $1,000 penalty for having the wrong color mailbox. After I hung up with Tom, I did some digging into my email. Sure enough, buried in my spam folder was a message from the HOA dated November 12th, announcing a mandatory meeting to vote on bylaw amendments. The spam filter had caught it because Patricia had apparently sent it from a new email address that she had not bothered to properly introduce to the community. The subject line was "Important HOA Business" in all caps, which my email client had flagged as potential spam. I could have fought this on procedural grounds, but something else was bothering me more. I grabbed my property deed and the stack of documents from my home purchase and started reading through everything carefully. It took me an hour, but I found what I was looking for in a separate agreement that had been notarized and filed with the county. The previous owner of my property, a man named Gerald Foster, had built the private bridge that connected Riverside Meadows to the main road. The development had been his project, and my property had originally been the sales office and model home. When the development sold out, Gerald had kept my property and the bridge. The bridge was built on an easement that crossed a small ravine with a creek at the bottom. Without that bridge, the only other way in or out of Riverside Meadows was a 10-mile detour around the ravine using back-country roads. Here was the critical part. Gerald had been responsible for maintaining the bridge, including winter maintenance. When he sold the property to me, that responsibility had transferred to me as well. The HOA paid me a maintenance fee of $1,500 per year to keep the bridge in good condition, which included plowing snow and salting ice during winter weather. It was all spelled out in a separate agreement that predated the HOA itself. I sat back in my chair and felt a smile spread across my face. If Patricia wanted to play hardball about salt, I was happy to comply. My driveway was technically HOA property by some definitions, even though it was on my lot. But the bridge was mine. I grabbed my phone and called Patricia directly. She answered on the third ring with her characteristic fake sweet voice. Patricia Cunningham speaking. How may I help you? Patricia, this is Sam Thompson. I just got your letter about the salt ban. Oh, Sam. Yes, I am so glad you received that. I was worried it might get lost in the mail. We really need everyone to comply with our new environmental initiatives. Riverside Meadows is a community that cares about our ecological footprint. Right. So just to be clear, you want me to stop using regular rock salt on my property? Exactly. We have approved alternatives that are much better for the environment. I can send you the vendor information right now if you would like. Okay. I will stop using salt immediately, I said. All salt usage ends today. Wonderful. I am so pleased that you are being cooperative about this. Some of our residents have been quite difficult about the changes. I believe in following the rules, I said, and then I hung up. It started snowing that afternoon. Vermont winters do not mess around, and by evening we had 6 inches of fresh powder with more coming down. The temperature dropped to 15 degrees, and I knew that by morning, everything would be a solid sheet of ice underneath that snow. I got up at 5 in the morning like I usually did during winter weather events. I fired up my plow truck and cleared my driveway perfectly, then spread a generous layer of the expensive green earth ice melt that I had driven into town to purchase the previous afternoon. My driveway looked great, completely safe and compliant with all HOA regulations. Then I got back in my truck and drove to the bridge. I plowed the snow off it, making sure the surface was clear, but I did not salt it. I did not put down any ice melt at all. I just left it as a clean, wet surface that I knew would freeze into a skating rink within the hour. By 7 in the morning, my phone started ringing. The first call was from Tom. Sam, did you forget to salt the bridge? I just about slid off the damn thing trying to get to work. Did not forget, I said. The HOA banned salt usage. I am complying with their environmental initiative. There was a long pause. The bridge is not HOA property, though. You maintain that separately. Sure, but Patricia's letter said I needed to stop using salt. She was very clear about environmental concerns. I am just being a good community member. Tom started laughing. Oh man, this is going to get interesting. Good luck, buddy. The next call was from a number I did not recognize. A woman's voice, tight with anger, came through the speaker. "Is this Sam Thompson? This is Barbara Williams from Riverside Meadows. I just slid halfway across the bridge in my minivan with my 3 children in the car. What is going on with the bridge maintenance? The HOA has banned salt usage," I explained calmly. "I am following the new bylaws. The bylaws do not apply to the bridge. That is separate." I did not see anything in the letter specifying that. It said I needed to stop using salt because of environmental concerns. The creek under the bridge is part of the environment too. I am just being responsible. She sputtered for a moment and then hung up. By 8 in the morning, I had received 14 phone calls, 6 text messages, and 3 people had showed up at my door in person. The bridge had become a legitimate safety hazard, and people were terrified to cross it. A few people with 4-wheel drive had made it across by going extremely slowly, but several others had turned around and taken the long detour to get to work. At 8:30, Patricia called. "Sam, what on earth is going on? I am getting calls from everyone in the neighborhood about the bridge." "I am following your directive," I said pleasantly. "No more salt. I am using only approved ice melt on my personal property. The bridge is not covered by the salt ban. You know that." "Actually, Patricia, I did not know that. Your letter did not specify. It said I needed to stop using salt, period. If you had wanted me to continue salting the bridge, you should have been more specific." I could practically hear her blood pressure rising through the phone. "This is ridiculous. You are putting people in danger. I am following HOA regulations." "If you have a problem with the regulations, maybe they should be reconsidered. Salt the bridge right now, or I will have you fined." "For what?" "Following your rules. I do not think that would hold up very well. Besides, the bridge maintenance agreement is separate from the HOA bylaws. You do not actually have authority over how I maintain it." Patricia was silent for a long moment. I could tell she was realizing the corner she had backed herself into. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice cold. "I want to have a community meeting to reconsider the salt ban. A properly noticed meeting where everyone can vote. We already had a vote that I was not properly notified about. The email went to my spam folder because you sent it from a new address without introduction. That is not proper notice under Vermont HOA law, and you know it." Another long silence. "Fine," she said. "I will schedule a meeting. Now salt the damn bridge. Rescind the salt ban in writing first. Send it to everyone in the community. Once I see that, I will resume normal bridge maintenance. That could take hours. People need to get in and out of the neighborhood. Then I suggest you work quickly. I will be here whenever you are ready." She hung up without another word. I made myself a fresh pot of coffee and settled in to wait. Through my front window, I could see the bridge, its surface gleaming with a thin coat of ice that caught the morning sunlight. A few cars had gathered on the far side, their drivers apparently afraid to attempt the crossing. I felt a small pang of guilt about the inconvenience I was causing my neighbors, but they had all voted for Patricia's ridiculous ban without considering how it would affect me. Sometimes people needed to understand the consequences of their decisions. At 9:15, my email dinged. Patricia had sent out a community-wide message. "Due to unforeseen circumstances regarding bridge maintenance agreements, the salt ban is temporarily suspended for all property owners while we review the implementation procedures. Normal winter maintenance protocols are reinstated effective immediately." I finished my coffee, put on my boots and coat, and headed out to the shed where I kept my salt spreader. Within 20 minutes, I had the bridge properly treated and safe for travel. Cars started crossing immediately, and several people honked and waved at me as they passed. But I knew this was not over. Patricia was not the type to let something like this go. She had been embarrassed, and in my experience, HOA presidents with wounded egos were dangerous creatures. Sure enough, 3 days later, I received another certified letter. This one informed me that the HOA was conducting a comprehensive review of all property maintenance agreements, and that my bridge maintenance contract was being evaluated for compliance with current community standards. They were also demanding detailed financial records of how I spent the $1,500 annual maintenance fee, including receipts for all materials and equipment. I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Hayes, who had helped me with the property purchase. I explained the situation, and she laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Let me get this straight," Jennifer said when she finally caught her breath. "The HOA president tried to ban salt. You complied in the most literal way possible, and now she is trying to audit your bridge maintenance. That is about the size of it. Sam, that maintenance agreement is ironclad. It was recorded with the county and predates the HOA's incorporation. They have absolutely no authority to audit you or change the terms. In fact, you could probably raise the fee if you wanted to. It has been stuck at $1,500 since 2003, and with inflation, that is worth a lot less now." "I do not want to gouge my neighbors," I said. "I just want to be left alone to maintain my property in peace. I will draft a response. But Sam, you need to be prepared for this to escalate. HOA boards can be incredibly petty, and it sounds like this Patricia person has it out for you." Jennifer was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I received violation notices for increasingly absurd infractions. My mailbox was apparently 3 inches too far from the curb. The wreath on my front door contained unapproved plant materials. My truck was parked in my driveway at an angle that presented an aesthetic disturbance to the community. Each violation came with a threat of fines ranging from $50 to $200. I documented everything carefully and sent it all to Jennifer, who assured me that none of it would hold up if challenged. But the harassment was taking its toll. I was spending hours dealing with HOA nonsense instead of working on my actual job. My consulting business was suffering because I was constantly distracted by whatever new complaint Patricia had invented. Then the weather turned really bad. A major winter storm rolled into Vermont, bringing with it 18 inches of snow and ice storm conditions. The power went out across Burlington, and the city was effectively shut down for 2 days. The bridge required round-the-clock maintenance to stay even remotely passable, and I was out there every few hours with my plow and salt spreader, working in temperatures that dropped to 0 degrees. On the second day of the storm, as I was making another pass on the bridge around 2 in the morning, Patricia pulled up in her Lexus. She got out, wearing a white puffy coat that probably cost more than my truck, and marched over to me. "We need to talk," she shouted over the wind. I shut off the truck and climbed down. "What are you doing out in this weather?" "I live here too, Sam, and I am tired of this ridiculous feud." "I am not feuding with anyone. I am just trying to maintain my property and this bridge without unreasonable restrictions." Patricia crossed her arms. The salt ban was not unreasonable. It was based on legitimate environmental concerns. "Then, why did you suspend it?" "Because you forced my hand with your little stunt." "I followed your rules exactly as written. If that created problems, maybe the rules were poorly thought out." She glared at me, her face red from cold and anger. "You think you are so smart, do not you? You and your legal agreements and your grandfather clauses. But you are still part of this community, and the community has standards. Standards like harassing homeowners with fake violations." "I have documented everything, Patricia. The mailbox measurement, the wreath materials, the truck parking angle, none of it is real. You are just mad that I did not roll over for you. Those are legitimate concerns raised by other homeowners. Really? Which homeowners? Because I have not heard from anyone except you about any of this. Patricia opened her mouth and then closed it again. She knew I had her. Look, I said, trying to soften my tone. I do not want to fight with you or the HOA. I just want reasonable rules that make sense. The blanket salt ban did not make sense, especially without proper notice and consideration for existing agreements. If you want to implement environmental initiatives, I am all for it. But do it the right way with proper process and community input. I am the president of this HOA, Patricia said, her voice icy. I do not need lectures about proper process from someone who is barely part of this community. Barely part of the community. I maintain the only reasonable access point to the entire neighborhood. Without this bridge, you and everyone else would be adding an hour to your daily commute. I think that makes me pretty integral to the community. The HOA could buy the bridge from you, Patricia said suddenly. We could take over maintenance ourselves. I laughed. The bridge is not for sale. And even if it were, the HOA does not have the equipment or expertise to maintain it properly. Do you have a plow truck? A salt spreader? Someone willing to come out at 2 in the morning in a blizzard to keep it safe? Patricia did not answer. She just stood there in the falling snow, looking furious and cold. Go home, Patricia, I said, not unkindly. Get some sleep. We can figure this out when the weather clears. She turned and stomped back to her Lexus without another word. I watched her tail lights disappear across the bridge, then climbed back into my truck to finish the job. When the storm finally passed, the HOA went quiet for about a week. I did not receive any new violation notices, and Patricia stopped calling. I actually started to think that maybe our middle-of-the-night conversation had gotten through to her, that we had reached some kind of understanding. I should have known better. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening in February. I had not planned to attend, since these meetings were usually just Patricia and her cronies rubber stamping whatever initiatives she wanted to push through. But Tom called me the day before and insisted I should be there. Patricia is up to something, he said. She has been going door to door talking to people. I think she is planning something big. I showed up at the community center at 7 in the evening to find the room packed. Usually, these meetings drew maybe 10 or 15 people. Tonight there had to be 60 residents crammed into the space. Patricia stood at the front with her board members, a smile on her face that made me deeply uneasy. Thank you all for coming, Patricia began once everyone had settled. I know we have had some challenges this winter regarding snow and ice management. Tonight, we are going to address those challenges and find a solution that works for everyone. I felt my stomach sink. As many of you know, our community's access depends on a privately owned bridge that is maintained by Sam Thompson. Patricia gestured toward me, and suddenly 60 pairs of eyes turned in my direction. Sam has done an adequate job maintaining the bridge, but recent events have shown that our current arrangement is not sustainable. When Sam decided to stop salting the bridge over a minor bylaw disagreement, he put the entire community at risk. That is not what happened, I said loudly. I followed the salt ban that the HOA implemented. When it was suspended, I resumed normal maintenance immediately. The salt ban was never intended to apply to the bridge, Patricia said smoothly. Sam knew that, but chose to interpret the rules in a way that would cause maximum disruption. This kind of behavior shows that we cannot rely on his goodwill to maintain our only access point. This is garbage, I said, standing up. The letter I received did not specify any exceptions. I followed it exactly as written. If that caused problems, it is because the rule was poorly written, not because I did anything wrong. Several people in the crowd murmured agreement, but Patricia pressed on. Regardless of the past, we need to think about the future. I am proposing that the HOA purchase the bridge from Sam and take over maintenance ourselves. We would hire a professional snow removal service and ensure that bridge access is never compromised by personal disagreements. The bridge is not for sale, I said firmly, and it is part of my property deed. You cannot force me to sell it. Of course not, Patricia said, her smile never wavering. But we can make you an offer. I am proposing that the HOA offer Sam $50,000 for the bridge and the easement rights. That is more than fair market value for what amounts to a maintenance headache. The crowd started buzzing with conversation. $50,000 sounded like a lot of money to people who did not understand property law or the value of controlling access. Jennifer, my lawyer, had come with me at my request. She stood up now, her voice cutting through the noise. I am Jennifer Hayes, Mr. Thompson's legal counsel. What Mrs. Cunningham is proposing is not only financially foolish for the HOA, but also legally problematic. The bridge and easement are integral to Mr. Thompson's property value and cannot be separated from the main parcel without extensive legal proceedings. Additionally, the maintenance agreement includes liability protections that the HOA would lose if they took over direct control. Your insurance premiums alone would likely exceed the current maintenance fee within a year. Patricia's smile finally cracked. I am sure we can work out the legal details. I am sure you cannot, Jennifer said, because Mr. Thompson is not selling. And any attempt to force the sale or otherwise interfere with his property rights would result in a lawsuit that the HOA would lose badly. We will put it to a community vote, Patricia said desperately. Let the residents decide if they want to buy the bridge. You can vote all you want, Jennifer replied. It does not change the fact that you cannot force a property owner to sell. This is not how property rights work in Vermont or anywhere else in America. I watched Patricia's face go through a series of expressions, from anger to embarrassment to calculation. She was not done, I could tell. She was just regrouping. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that, with different residents shouting questions and opinions. Some people thought the HOA should buy the bridge if they could. Others thought Patricia was overstepping. A few people came up to me afterward to apologize for the whole situation, saying they had not realized what was really going on. Tom clapped me on the shoulder as I was leaving. Man, you have really gotten yourself into it this time. Patricia is not going to let this go. What else can she do? I asked. She cannot force me to sell and she cannot change the maintenance agreement. I do not know, Tom said. But I have lived here for 10 years, and I have seen Patricia destroy people who got in her way. She is relentless. Over the next month, Patricia launched what I can only describe as a campaign of bureaucratic warfare. She filed complaints with the county about the bridge's structural integrity, forcing me to pay for an expensive engineering inspection that confirmed what I already knew. The bridge was perfectly safe and well maintained. She contacted the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation about the salt runoff into the creek, triggering another inspection that found no issues. She even tried to get the state to require me to install guardrails on the bridge, claiming it was a public safety hazard. But that backfired when the inspector pointed out that the bridge was private property and met all applicable codes. Each of these inspections and investigations cost me time and money. Even though I was cleared every time, I still had to take days off work to deal with inspectors and file paperwork. My consulting business was really suffering now, and I was starting to feel the financial strain. Then Patricia made a mistake that would ultimately be her undoing. In March, she sent out an email to the entire community stating that I was under investigation by multiple state agencies for safety violations and environmental crimes related to the bridge. She strongly suggested that residents avoid using the bridge until these serious issues are resolved and take the long detour instead. The email was defamatory and factually false. I had not been under investigation for crimes. The inspections had all cleared me of any wrongdoing. Patricia had deliberately mischaracterized the situation to damage my reputation and pressure me into selling. I forwarded the email to Jennifer, who read it and immediately said, "She just handed us a slam-dunk defamation case." "I do not want to sue my neighbors," I said wearily. "I just want this to end." "Sam, this is not about your neighbors. This is about an HOA president who is abusing her power and intentionally lying about you in writing to damage your reputation and interfere with your property rights. If you do not push back hard, she will keep escalating. Eventually, she will do something that really hurts you." Jennifer was right, but I still hesitated. Lawsuits were expensive and time-consuming, and I was not sure I had the energy for it. Then my phone rang. It was one of my consulting clients, a construction firm in Burlington that provided a significant portion of my annual income. The project manager sounded uncomfortable. "Sam, I hate to do this, but we received some concerning information about legal issues you are having. We have a policy about working with contractors who are under investigation by state agencies. Until your situation is cleared up, we need to put your contract on hold." My stomach dropped. "Who told you I was under investigation?" I received an email from someone named Patricia Cunningham. She said she was the president of your HOA and felt obligated to inform us about ongoing safety and environmental investigations. "Is it true?" "No," I said firmly. "Those inspections have already been completed, and I was cleared of any wrongdoing. Patricia is lying to damage my business because of a property dispute." "Oh." The project manager sounded uncertain. "Well, if you can send me documentation of that, maybe we can sort this out." "I will send it today. And I want you to know that I am pursuing legal action against Patricia for defamation. What she did is not just unethical, it is illegal." After I hung up, I called Jennifer back. "File the lawsuit. She just cost me a major client. This has gone too far." Jennifer drafted a comprehensive complaint alleging defamation, intentional interference with business relationships, and harassment. We sued not just Patricia personally, but also the HOA board for failing to supervise her actions. The lawsuit asked for actual damages to cover my lost business income, plus punitive damages for Patricia's intentional misconduct. When the lawsuit was filed, it created shockwaves through Riverside Meadows. Many residents had not realized how far Patricia had gone. The email about state investigations had been bad enough, but when people learned she had contacted my business clients directly, opinion turned sharply against her. An emergency HOA board meeting was called, and this time I was invited to attend specifically to discuss the situation. Patricia looked haggard when I arrived, her usual perfect makeup and hair showing signs of stress. "Sam, I think we can resolve this without litigation," she said before the meeting officially started. "I may have overstated some things in my email. I was concerned about community safety, but I can see how my wording might have been misleading." "You did not overstate anything," I said coldly. "You lied. You deliberately mischaracterized cleared inspections as ongoing investigations and then contacted my business clients to sabotage my income. That is not a misunderstanding. That is intentional, malicious conduct." One of the other board members, a man named Richard, spoke up. "Patricia, you contacted his clients. Why would you do that?" "I thought they should know about the potential liability issues with the bridge," Patricia said defensively. "If something happened, they could be affected." "That makes no sense," Richard said. "Sam's consulting work has nothing to do with the bridge. This looks like retaliation." The meeting devolved into arguments between the board members. It became clear that Patricia had been acting largely on her own, without informing the rest of the board about her more extreme tactics. Several board members were furious that they were now being sued because of her actions. By the end of the meeting, the board had voted 4-1 to remove Patricia as president, with Patricia casting the only vote in her favor. They also voted to issue a formal apology to me and to cooperate fully with resolving the lawsuit, but the damage was done. Even with Patricia removed from power, I had lost business income and suffered significant stress and legal expenses. Jennifer assured me that we had a strong case and would likely recover damages, but it would take time to work through the courts. In the meantime, I continued maintaining the bridge as I always had. The new HOA president, Richard, reached out to me personally to apologize and to assure me that the board would not interfere with my property rights going forward. He also suggested that the board would consider increasing the annual maintenance fee to account for inflation, which I appreciated. Patricia, meanwhile, seemed to vanish from community life. I heard through Tom that she and her husband were considering selling their house and moving, unable to face the social fallout from her actions. The lawsuit moved forward through the spring and summer. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that her statements were opinion, and that she had been acting in her capacity as HOA president, which should provide some protection. Jennifer tore those arguments apart, pointing to the specific false statements of fact and the evidence that Patricia had been acting beyond her authority and in direct conflict with board interests. In August, we received an unexpected development. The Vermont Attorney General's office contacted us to say they were investigating Patricia for potential criminal harassment and abuse of power. Apparently, I was not the only person she had targeted during her time as HOA president. Several other residents had filed complaints about threatening letters, false violations, and retaliatory fines. The AG's office was looking into whether Patricia's conduct rose to the level of criminal harassment under Vermont law. I gave a statement to the investigator, providing copies of all the correspondence and documenting the timeline of events. The investigator seemed particularly interested in Patricia's contact with my business clients, noting that it could potentially constitute criminal interference with business operations. By September, facing mounting legal pressure and the prospect of criminal charges, Patricia agreed to settle the lawsuit. The settlement included a payment of $75,000 to cover my damages and legal fees, along with a formal written apology and a permanent injunction preventing Patricia from any further contact with me or interference with my property. The HOA's insurance covered most of the payout, though Patricia had to contribute $20,000 personally. The criminal investigation concluded in October. While the AG's office found that Patricia's conduct was highly inappropriate and abusive, they determined that it did not quite meet the threshold for criminal charges. Patricia received a formal warning that any similar conduct in the future would result in prosecution. By that point, Patricia and her husband had already listed their house for sale. They moved out of Riverside Meadows in November, and I never saw her again. The new HOA board, led by Richard, turned out to be reasonable and professional. They rescinded the salt ban and several other controversial policies that Patricia had pushed through. They also worked with me to update the bridge maintenance agreement, increasing the annual fee to $3,000 to account for inflation and the actual costs of materials and labor. In return, I agreed to provide quarterly maintenance reports and to coordinate with the HOA on any major bridge repairs. My consulting business recovered once I was able to assure clients that the legal issues were resolved. The construction firm that had suspended my contract not only reinstated it, but gave me additional work, feeling guilty about how they had reacted to Patricia's false information. Life in Riverside Meadows settled into a comfortable routine. I continued maintaining the bridge through 2 more winters without incident. Residents would wave and thank me when they saw me out there plowing or salting, and several people made a point of telling me they appreciated what I did for the community. Tom and I remained good friends, and he loved telling the story of the salt ban standoff at neighborhood gatherings. It became a sort of legend in the community, a cautionary tale about HOA overreach and the importance of respecting property rights. I learned a lot from the experience. I learned that standing up for yourself matters, even when it is difficult and uncomfortable. I learned that legal agreements exist for good reasons, and that property rights are not just abstract concepts, but real protections against abuse of power. And I learned that most people are reasonable when you give them the facts and treat them with respect. But most importantly, I learned to read HOA emails very carefully and to never assume that people in positions of power will act in good faith. I started attending HOA meetings regularly, not to cause trouble but to stay informed and to make sure that no future board could pull the kind of stunts that Patricia had attempted. The bridge still stands today, connecting Riverside Meadows to the outside world, and I still maintain it through every winter storm. But now when I am out there at 2 in the morning spreading salt and plowing snow, I do it with the knowledge that my rights are protected and that the community respects the arrangement we have. And every time I spread that salt on the bridge surface, watching it melt the ice and make the road safe for my neighbors to travel, I think about that January morning when Patricia tried to ban salt from my driveway. I think about the chaos that ensued when I took her literally and stopped salting the bridge. And I smile, because sometimes the most effective way to fight a bad rule is to follow it exactly as written and let everyone see the consequences. The experience changed how I viewed community governance and HOA power structures. I became more active in local politics, attending not just HOA meetings but also town council meetings and county planning sessions. I wanted to understand how these systems worked and how to protect myself and others from similar abuses of power. I also started consulting with other homeowners who were having disputes with their HOAs. Word spread about my successful fight against Patricia, and people from across Vermont and even neighboring states reached out for advice. I connected them with Jennifer and other lawyers who specialized in property law, and I helped them understand their rights and options. The Riverside Meadows HOA board eventually implemented new policies to prevent future abuses. They created an appeals process for violations, required board votes on any major policy changes, and established term limits for officers. Richard, as president, made transparency and communication priorities, sending out monthly newsletters and holding quarterly town halls where residents could voice concerns. The community became stronger and more united after Patricia's departure. It was as if her toxic presence had been poisoning relationships and creating artificial divisions. Once she was gone, people relaxed and started actually enjoying their neighborhood again. I still live in my house at the entrance to Riverside Meadows, and I still maintain the bridge. The arrangement works well for everyone involved. The HOA pays me a fair fee, I keep the bridge safe and functional, and the community has reliable access without the delays and costs of the long detour. Looking back on the whole saga, from that first certified letter about the salt ban to Patricia's eventual departure and the settlement of the lawsuit, I realize how easily things could have gone differently. If I had just ignored Patricia's letter and continued using salt on my driveway, she would have fined me into submission or made my life so miserable that I would have considered selling and moving. If I had not known about the bridge maintenance agreement and my property rights, I would not have had the leverage to push back effectively. But I did know my rights, and I did push back, and the results benefited not just me but the entire community. Sometimes fighting a bully is not just about protecting yourself. It is about protecting everyone else who might become targets in the future. The bridge stands as a physical reminder of that principle. It connects the community to the wider world, but it also represents the importance of individual property rights and the limits of collective authority. No HOA, no matter how well-intentioned, has the right to override fundamental property rights or to harass and defame homeowners who stand up for themselves. I keep a copy of Patricia's salt ban letter framed on my office wall, right next to the settlement agreement from the lawsuit. When I am having a bad day or feeling frustrated with bureaucracy, I look at those documents and remember that standing up for yourself matters, that rules should be reasonable and fairly applied, and that bullies only win if good people decide the fight is not worth it. The fight was worth it. My life is better, my community is better, and somewhere out there, Patricia hopefully learned a lesson about the consequences of abusing power. And every winter, when the snow falls and the temperature drops, I head out to the bridge with my plow truck and my salt spreader, doing the same job I have always done, maintaining the connection that keeps Riverside Meadows accessible to the world, and proving that reasonable people can work together when petty tyrants get out of the way.